Hello everyone, my name is Kyle Cherek and I am the host with Chef Michael Twitty of the Madison College Vollrath Culinary Chef Demo Series. Hello my friend.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Again.
Yeah. So you're back to Wisconsin.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be here this many times.
Did you ever imagine when you were going deep into, through Afro-Culinary to the African diaspora, specifically Southern cooking, and then, you'd come to Wisconsin. I think this is your fourth time in 3 years.
Probably fifth.
Fifth?
Yeah, all the different things I've been involved in. So,
yeah.
But Madison's a great food town and, exceptional farmers market. So
yeah,
I've always enjoyed coming here and seeing what we do here. And I've been able to take two chefs from Madison to the continent.
That's right, yeah.
And back, so.
That's right.
That's been a privilege.
And will one of them be here tonight, I think, for the
I
demo series?
I hope so.
Cool. Thomas Keller, by the way, he said this off the record, but I'm going to say it on the camera so you can deny it. When I walked through the Madison Farmers Market here, he said, I think this is the nation's best farmers market.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is a Californian.
Right.
Now, he didn't want to admit that.
Mr. French Laundry himself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a particularly good day at the farmers market. Anyway, it's a particularly good day when you're here with us again. So you're not the typical chef that this series has availed itself to. You really made your name doing historic reenactments with techniques that were not only foreign to most people, but were almost lost. Mm-hmm. But you just came from cooking in one of the best restaurants in America, Gray, where you did 100 plates, one of a course, with obviously very modern techniques. First of all, what was the course that you did? But how do you, in your creative mind, how do you bridge those gaps? How do you get the flavors that you want to translate through? You're really just a lovable historian who happens to be caught up with food.
The flavor is easy.
Yeah?
The flavor is no problem. It's translating back to a modern kitchen, especially an industrial kitchen, because my culinary experience and growth has been in the home or in the hearth.
Right.
It hasn't been in, a modern restaurant where I'm on a line.
You talk about how your grandmother taught you.
Yeah, my grandmother, my mother, my father, and then just, working alongside people who had catering businesses or were doing cooking professionally, and just reading and absorbing all I could and focusing on that historical foodway tradition and folk foodways, you know.
Right.
So I don't pretend to be, cordon bleu. I'm more cordon noir. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So there's that.
Yeah.
And then, the first time I walked into a kitchen, a modern kitchen like Carnegie Mellon was doing some food to go along with some presentations I was doing there. And everybody was great.
Yeah.
But I really stood out because I could not use the can opener. I didn't know how to because I'd gotten so used to gridirons and spiders and Dutch ovens and the fireplace and sticking my arm in the oven to see how hot it was.
Starting the fire at 4 a.m. so you could do dinner. Yeah.
That it was really foreign to me. All the steel, all the but I've come around.
Right.
Well, it's a lot easier. I love that dishwasher though. Wish I had that in 1770.
Well,
That'd
they did.
Awesome.
It was just more your folk.
Yeah, it was people, not that 2 minute thing.
Yeah.
But there is a translation act going on. There is one thing that's hard to translate, and that is the wood smoke. Because some foods it has no effect, and other foods it definitely imparts a flavor.
I think about corn and how seminal that is in the flavors that you've been bringing forth and touching base with through history, and how corn plus wood smoke is 15 times more than the sum of its parts.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas, I don't know, what would be another comparison? Maybe a simple fish or something like heat.
Oh, yeah.
Heat is just heat in that sense.
A shad or eel or wild turkey.
Right.
In those environments. It's totally different.
Yeah.
Also pumpkin.
Yeah.
So it's really, and also the seasons. I think you feel the seasons a lot more when you have to deal with the temperature that's there. None of the spaces that I cook in are temperature monitored. It's whatever is going on outside.
Right.
And the heat of that hearth, that's it.
Well, I got into an argument with somebody about how seasonal regional food, back when it was trending, let's say 2008, 2009, I said, well, are you guys cooking outside in the elements? Like, no, we would never. I'm like, well, you're not cooking seasonally, regionally then. You might be getting things from the farmer that brought things in a little red wagon. That's fine. That's legit. I'm not doubting that your asparagus was picked on the side of the road wild. But if you're just putting it into, whatever, and this temperature controlled with the oven, it's not, you can't make that argument with the same authenticity that you're weighing in, because when it's 24 degrees, that asparagus is going to be, well, you wouldn't have those cooking at the same time. You get what I'm going at, though. When it's 72, that asparagus is going to behave entirely different than a cold summer evening when it's 50 degrees. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And even, to know that people at Monticello and other sites were growing their little hot boxes. And they were producing cucumbers and other vegetables in the winter.
Right.
Because they have that hot box, they're keeping those up. It's just fascinating and amazing.
Yeah.
That's one thing I have not really tried to make that leap with. Is, I figure Barbara Kingsolver did it for me.
Yeah.
That whole I'm gonna take 1 year and I'm gonna only eat from where I'm living. It's gonna be all seasonal and local.
Yeah.
That's no appeal to me, actually. And it's because that's like saying that no one ever imported their food.
Right.
And the folks who had the best resources imported their food. Now it doesn't matter what resources you have.
Yeah, supply chains cover
it doesn't. That's not a thing.
Right.
So I don't see the merit in doing it other than supporting local folks, people I know who are doing good work, and also just cutting down on carbon footprint. Other than that, it's not something I would go full hog into.
So I want to get back to the kitchen, because you and I talked about this, I think maybe the first time we met, where in the kitchen, like you were cooking at the Gray, or when you do these big events at Culinary Melanie, or wherever you were, there's a dance that you have around the kitchen. Right. And you were talking about how when you started doing the reenactment dinners, you got into a dance too, but it was a singular dance because it was just you. And then journalists that were covering you actually noticed, like there was this groove that you got into where it wasn't a pantomime anymore. You were cooking in the time, in the space, in the historical experience. But what I love is that this dance, moves from industrial kitchen like this to when you were working in a historical context.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, how have those two, two-step together? You know what I mean? Like making that transition from one to the other, or is it the same kind of feeling in your soul as you're moving about the kitchen?
Sort of. I mean, I've been fortunate that every time I'm in a modern kitchen, especially a restaurant kitchen or an academic college kitchen, I've had tons of support and help, people who know what they're doing, who can help me out and guide me. Which
is the opposite
of community versus
your plantation.
Being by yourself or being with very few people.
Yeah.
And to interpret food that way, I guess the cooking part, you have to have more patience. There's a certain, people notice that about me. They notice, I do little rituals. I talk to the pots. I talk to the ancestors. I see that as being part of the whole cooking process. Whereas here, I'm more likely to cuss and say, please don't let this blah, 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 blah thing burn.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
But also just there's a lot more sharing. So someone else is doing a dish, I'm doing a dish. You have family meal, you have all these experiences that you share together versus, 1 to 5 of us working together in, a cabin or a kitchen or an outdoor space.
Right.
It's, especially if they're the African-American folks.
Yeah.
That's the moment where those ancestors come back to you and all of us, and we kind of share this kind of communal conversation. There might be song, there might be joking. There's really a lot more joking. And I think people need to remember that's all part of the natural native experience of it. Sort of like, joning on, we say joning, playing the dozens with each other.
Playing the what?
Dozens with each other. African-American expression to make fun of one another.
Okay.
Especially if you're the same gender.
Okay.
You nudge people.
Yeah.
Playfully back and forth.
We're in this closed circuit, and I can kind of nudge you, and you can nudge me.
Yeah. And it's not that deep.
Yeah.
especially about how the food tastes or whose food is better, or, you know, and then at the end of the day, when the food goes out, it's us.
Yeah.
Not me or you, it's us. And that's very profound for me. It's where I think in either experience, I'm finding family. I mean, that is a big center part of my work. It's just family, community, being an outsider, being an outlier, and using the kitchen, using food to give myself a place to be, a haven, a home. Yeah.
A center. So that, you got me thinking anthropologically, because what you're describing with a group of African-American cooks and chefs, and then sending out the food, this is us together, that exists in cooking culture in America right now, period. I mean, it does in many kitchens. But it almost had to evolve past the very stiff French, you know, Escoffier's brigade, you do what you do. That's all you do. There's a hierarchy. Do not confuse the hierarchy. You answer this way, which is completely antithetical to what you're talking about. Within, and I'm just guessing because I don't have the reference point, but which I think that antithetical thing has always been how the African American community has cooked together, right? There's been this otherness that then came together. So this is our safe spot, and this is how we translate some of our culture, how we talk.
Right.
Yeah, through food. But that still exists, that this is us and then we present it. That exists in kitchens all over America. And that's one of the things that I love about cooking is that there's nowhere to hide.
Right.
Someone can come into a kitchen and they can say, I'm this good. And their BS has to walk in 5 minutes or everybody else in the kitchen is going to know they're not this good.
That's right.
I mean, there's so few careers, professions, trades that are like that.
Right.
You know, like we can
It's
probably...
immediate.
It's immediate, yeah. We can probably count them on one hand.
Right.
And it goes back to something very, very private. Like hunters can say, I'm this good. And you're going to know in a short period of time.
Either you don't.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, you either caught the bird or you didn't. I mean, there's no in between.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you re-explain a cuisine that's historical while you're reinventing it? And I mean, you're referencing, you know, obviously things that came from the slave past, but you're also in your mind making up, okay, how am I going to do this? Because it wasn't like, that's the point. That was your point. There are cookbooks.
Right.
There's stories, but...
That's an important part of the process. Number one, you have to put together in your mind a couple different things. Number one, we have oral tradition. In our families, in our communities, commonly held beliefs, which may or may not be true. We have also impressions, you know.
Lord.
Sometimes things are not what you expect them to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's what people say in passing in narratives.
Okay.
They'll actually describe a dish or a process.
Yeah.
And that's great because it gives you an outline, but there's no numbers.
Yeah.
So you have to really think about that. Then there are historic receipts. Receipt is the old word for recipe in American English. Where you do have some sense of measurement and other flavors, but remember, that's one person's one version.
Right, right.
So those
it's like the game of telephone.
Right.
Yeah.
Those recipes get a vote, but they don't get a veto. Are also penned in the hand of the slave holder, not in the hand of the enslaved.
Oh, so there's all kinds of layers.
Yes. And also, we already know that improvisation
Yeah.
and call and response, some of the same elements that are part of African-American fashion, music, dance, also play a role in soul food in the kitchen. Because then you're like, well, if I don't have this, what can I do? If I don't have that, what can I do?
Well, and just soul food, and correct me if I'm wrong, but soul food is a response to the need at the moment. So it's not like you make I'll take a quintessential, whatever, yams or something the same way that next day, because it's a response to the needs of the people that you're cooking for.
Yes, and what you have on hand.
Yeah.
And also what might taste better one day, what you feel.
Right.
What you're inspired to add to the pot.
Hence the name.
Right. Because it comes from, I call it the only cuisine that's standard to something transcendental and invisible. Like God, like love, like imagination that you feel. Feeling is the only way to know it, to process it. And so all of those things are elemental. So on a scholarly level, what I have to do is figure out what they're talking about,
Right.
down to the varieties. Sometimes it's an issue of why would you need so many eggs, or why would you need so much this, or what squash is this size, etc. Mm-hmm. And then, okay, what varieties would have been possible? The next question is, how much volume are we talking about?
Right.
What's possible? What's logical? The next thing is, how practical is it? That's why cooking the old way is important, not just to have fun and just that. It's to actually see how practical it is. I'll give a clear example. Chicken and waffles. Mm-hmm. Chicken and waffles was no way in hell a dish people had way, 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 way back. Because first of all, most Americans didn't have waffle irons until the
60s?
Well, not even that. The mid 19th century Southern plantation.
Okay.
By the 1810s, 1820s, until through Reconstruction, you have these waffle irons that are, have two long, tongs attached to them, and you put them in the fire and they're square.
Okay.
And you have to go through this whole process of just like timing yourself. That is extraordinarily painful because number one, to deliver those bad boys hot to the table.
Right.
Meant a streamlined, exact process.
Yeah.
I don't think that they had a stack of waffles.
To have waffles and fried chicken cross the finish line at the same time?
Yes.
I mean...
Yes, and have the butter, and have them warm.
Right.
And have the gravy, because this was not, this nonsense you see in the restaurants where it's like maple syrup and chicken. That doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
It was like eating chicken and biscuits, basically.
Yeah.
And
which can happen. You can keep those warm on top of the stove. Yeah, when they've been done.
But we're not talking about this. We're talking about an open hearth, a fireplace.
Right, okay.
So you got to think about all those different levels. So I tested it out and I said, well, whoever did this had to have more than one person. I even had one reference that said something about making them in the fireplace in the dining room.
Yeah, sure.
So maybe the chicken was done.
That's practically table side.
But the waffles were done right there.
Right there, yeah.
So that's another element of just like, oh, now I see how this works.
That's like your bananas Foster. You're not going to make them in the kitchen then bring them out to somebody.
Right.
At Brennan's. Like,
part of it's the show.
They just stand up and leave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Part of it's the show. Part of it's the act of demonstrating this craft.
Yeah.
And of course, the person doing this would not have been a newbie. They would have been somebody who had ample skill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quick fire.
Yeah, totally.
And so but then we have to ask the ethical, moral, modern question of, okay, well, this person's not employed. Mm-hmm. They're not even considered,
they're not even considered
a human being.
Exactly.
They're 3/5 of a human being.
Yeah.
And yet they're asked to put on the spectacle of being, as you said a few minutes ago, a cook who knows what they're doing from the very second they walk into a kitchen.
Yeah.
So they're putting on the spectacle of having the best chefs at their command.
Right, right. It's another form of showing off. Mm-hmm. After you walk up the big grand stairs that the slaves built, after you walk past the furniture that the slaves built and polished, after you walk over the rugs that they clean, then you've got somebody who's basically employing culinary plus foundry skills.
Right.
In split-second action.
Right.
Yeah.
All of it.
To get you chicken and waffles.
Yeah. And how different that experience is. So you walk into a modern kitchen, and sometimes I really do think about who made all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How does this stuff get to us?
Yeah.
What are the practices involved in getting those utensils, gadgets, appliances to us?
Yeah.
The food, how is it sourced?
Well, we talked about this with Patrick Clark when he turned down the Clintons as the chef of the White House. He had his great gig across the street at the hotel, but he said, my people have already done that. I mean, up until René Verdon came in as the famous French chef that Jackie Bouvier, brought in for the Kennedys, it was African-American ladies that weren't even considered caterers.
Right.
Cooking across the street, getting paid less, right, and delivering this fantastic food. Probably, no offense to Verdon, but probably better in its own ecology than what he was doing.
Right.
Yummier. Probably yummier.
Right.
Yummier.
But the whole idea that you could extract that labor from them for a lesser price.
Yeah.
Even though what you were really getting was several hundred years of expertise.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's the part that really amazes me about the whole narrative. Is that, sometimes it's me wrestling with books, and other times it's me wrestling with my ancestors. Either way, you're getting, a cold clock's worth of lives worth of experience when I do what I do.
So how did you wrestle with your ancestors when you were doing your plantation dinners and you're thinking in your mind, damn it, I'd just like an aluminum pot with 2 handles. God, I'd
you don't
kill
think
for
that
a
way.
ladle.
No,
No,
because
can I get a hotel sheet pan?
You have ladles. You have wooden trenchers. You have the pots.
You have some cast iron, but don't tell me
But
you
it's
have a
not
sheet. A hotel pan has saved my life. Come on.
Yeah, but it's not the same. I actually prefer the cast iron stuff.
Okay.
And contrary to popular belief, some of the stuff that we're using, is really high-end, special order duplications of past tools. It's not like you can just go, to a certain well-known cast iron company and buy all your stuff. They're very good, but to make it make it exact, and it's not even the same between, say, for example, 1780 and 1830.
Right.
That's what's even more complicated about it.
Well, it's true. I don't know if it's Pepin, maybe he said it, but he was like, with every whisk, we're just trying to get back to the perfect twist of rushes that Carême had his people using, where it was like just the right groove of branches that were dry enough and still damp enough.
Right.
And we're just trying to get back to that with all these fantastic milled, designed,
Which is funny, because somebody says a whisk, and I'm going, oh, some twigs?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Even that is a different relationship with your tools.
Yeah.
Wood. What type of wood? Red oak versus white oak, not the same. Mm-hmm. Different types of hickories. Mm-hmm. Knowing never to use pine for anything but kindling.
Right.
Some people don't know that.
Yeah. How far did you stumble while you were figuring all this out?
A lot, but I liked it.
Yeah.
I like making mistakes. First of all, people didn't rush to eat it. And it's not because it was as bad.
Well, no, we all forget.
Prejudice.
That the Michael Twitty that we all know, and we all want to go back and have you do those dinners again.
Right.
We all forget, there was 8 people there, and they weren't that enthusiastic about the food.
Because it's not out of Teflon.
Right.
Because there's nature around you, and they're worried that the mouse poop is in there.
Right.
No matter how much you tell them, I would never eat from a pot that has mouse poop in it.
Yeah.
That's what you go through. I would love to do more of that, but on a small scale. Mm-hmm. But you always have to remind people, yes, the fire is real. The fire is real.
The fire is real.
People actually have the attitude. I've asked the question 10 times, is the fire real? Is the food real?
Jesus.
I'm like, wow, no, I'm animatronic.
Yeah,
that's what I am.
Right.
Oh, I don't. You're gonna cook in that? They think that cast iron pots are dirty. They think that they're poisonous. Mm-hmm. And I had to remind them. I said, you're getting far more poison from that coated material you use in your kitchen,
right,
which is probably really scratched up.
Yeah.
So you won't replace because you're cheap.
Yeah.
You're getting far more poison in your body than I'm in mine.
That's true. That's true.
So all of that. And then comes the mistakes, which I would never make. That's what you do. You cook something all the time so that you can make the mistakes for yourself. Mm-hmm. And then it's good. Once you stop getting frustrated, well, it didn't come out perfectly the first time because you're learning, we know this. The mistakes are good because they teach us the right way to go.
Right.
But it does frustrate you especially with rice. Rice is hard. Rice is hard. And it's like the first time that you do rice and it doesn't come out right.
Oh, and I can see it with your cherished Carolina gold.
Yes.
And there's all the ancestors there.
Yes.
And this is it's history. It's what's sustained.
And it's a moment.
And you
screw it deflates. And it's too moist, or it's too dry, or it's burned the bottom, which sometimes it should be burned the bottom.
Which is kind of good. Yeah.
But you can't tell them that.
Right. Yeah.
All they know is it should look like this. So you fight a lot of expectations people bring to your food.
Yeah.
Which are modern and not just modern. It's about the fact that people see the perfect idea of food, we forget how the camera, either the moving camera or the color camera, has changed how our expectations about food.
Right.
Versus someone who was just hungry, probably didn't eat a whole lot of XY ingredient that we eat a lot of, and came to somebody, it was grateful to be there.
Yeah, right. Just, I'm being fed.
Which makes the brown cake at the bottom of the rice pot with a lot of butter on it a delicacy, right?
Exactly.
Versus us going, oh, you burnt that rice.
Yeah.
Oh, even though in every rice culture around the world.
Well, I was just going to say, we were talking about Samin Nasrat before this, and I was with her yesterday. You go to Iran, and they're like, no, that's what we're trying to get.
Right, the tahdig.
That's the point.
Yeah, the tahdig at the bottom of the pot.
Right.
Is
the neighbors can have the other stuff.
Right. Yeah. But that's us and the gravy and all that goes on top of it. You eat the proteins. And that's another thing people to understand is that some of the profiles are flipped. Some of the whole, the expectations. Yeah. Like, oh, that fish head. No, the cheeks are the best. The eyes are the best.
Yeah.
The brown.
The quote unquote peasant food that's going to be thrown away. The offal, it doesn't have to be organal, but like the other cuts. Yeah.
All that's valued.
Yeah.
And also, how what people think about cooking in ashes. They forget that's a way of doing things.
Right.
How extraordinary that is.
Yeah.
Or, sometimes I'll go into a modern kitchen and the chef's like, well, I heard there's use salamanders. Yeah, same thing you do. It's almost practically the same thing to brown off.
Right.
Same kind of tool.
Yeah.
And so I remind people that I can do anything on an open hearth
that they can do.
They can do except for microwave.
Right. Which, thank God.
Yeah. But, and some people think of it as being very primitive. And sometimes it is compared to what we have access to.
Well, the efficiencies are different.
The efficiencies are different.
Yeah.
But the quality is sometimes far better.
And where you're cooking from, that was the sole purpose of that person that was enslaved. They didn't have other responsibilities because it was a full-time thing. And their skills were developed in that. And probably, I don't know, you can tell me better, probably they were able, in some respect, to pick their team because...
Oftentimes hereditary.
Oh, okay.
Not always, but sometimes there would be extended family or immediate family.
Okay.
Working together in a household. People try their best to keep cooks pacified. I wouldn't say happy.
Yeah.
Pacified's on the way to put it.